Let me. All right, we are officially live, but of course we are waiting for both YouTube and LinkedIn to start. So, Richard,
Yes.
you're in France this week.
I am in France.
Yeah.
It's a little bonus weekend.
Yeah.
Or like David likes to says, it's very Jane Austen.
Yes, it is. It's there to close the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
sounds
right.
very grand, but what it actually
Yes.
is sweeping pine needles off your front and your decking.
All right. So
It's
we're
the
live
way
on
you express
YouTube.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've got the UK in the dark and Singapore where it feels like 43 degrees at the moment, Joe.
Oh,
All right. All right.
40.
We are live.
Whoa.
Yeah.
that's
All
a
right.
lot.
You ready?
Yeah, we are.
Welcome to the Shit Show. My name's Andrea Edwards. David?
My name's David Coe. My name's David Coe.
Yeah.
Is
Richard?
my audio not
Should we
working?
pretend none of this happened? Okay, we got Andrea, David, Richard, and then myself. Here we go, everybody.
you are.
Andrea, you.
You want to start again?
Yeah, let's
No.
start again.
Let's
start again.
Why not?
All right. I know where the confusion lies. I'll swap you two. All right. Welcome to the Shit Show. My name's Andrea Edwards. Oh, God. We're working with you, finance people. All right.
My name's David Coe. I didn't realize we were starting again.
Yes, we were.
Okay.
And at the
All right,
bottom left,
this is what's
you
going to
have me.
happen. Nobody's watching. The internet's not here. We're just here by ourselves. Andrea will start talking, and then David, you introduce yourself, and Richard, and then myself. Now,
Okay. So this is what it's like running a show. All right.
living up
Ready?
the name of the show.
Welcome to the Shit Show.
Welcome, everyone.
My name is David. Welcome.
Joe?
Oh boy. Okay. You know what? Andrea Edwards, David Coe, Richard. I haven't figured out your last name yet, and my name is Joe Augustin. And welcome to the Shit Show. The Shit Show is usually a show about other people, but this time we're a bit meta. It's a bit about ourselves right now as well.
Yes.
The show is about the poly crisis, the meta crisis, all the stuff that's going wrong in the world, the big stuff, and maybe some of the small stuff, depending on your perspective. And what we try to do is make sense of it all. And despite everything we're talking about, we are actually optimists, although I couldn't find the word in that particular moment there. We also try to bring onto the show diverse points of view. Now, before I talk about that, I just want to do one thing that we always forget to do because we're not professionals in this field. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, do something with this and help us spread the word about the show. If your like or share, at the end of it all doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do, then you can take it back. But for now, let's take a chance and give us one of those. We like to bring on diverse points of view and see different things that maybe we're not looking at as well. And for that purpose, we bring on our guests. So today's guest is someone called Heidi Oxley-Whitnell. I should have checked how to pronounce her name before this. Now, she's all about enabling students through experiential learning and community engagement to make a difference. Now, Heidi has been with CAS, that's Creativity, Activity, Service, and Experiential Learning Coordinator, and the Experiential Learning Coordinator at UWC, that's United World College in Thailand. She's been there for nearly 10 years. And is a regular award winner for the work that she does. She's loved by students and the whole community in Phuket. And Heidi is a passionate force for good in a world that needs such role models. Heidi is part of CAS Connected, which aims to support CAS coordinators globally through professional development and mentorship, helping educators design programs that move beyond checklists to build authentic and sustainable relationships with their communities. And she's, of course, a good friend of Andrea. So, Andrea, why don't you bring her in?
She's taught my boys, and I love her. She's amazing. So, welcome, Heidi.
Welcome.
Oh, I got a bit of a seize up.
It was a little bit of it. There she is.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay, so
yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, we've got some we've got some connection issues here, but
yeah, I'm sure it will come back. It's probably the first little wobble as she connects. It's fine.
Yeah.
And now we see her move as well, so she is definitely here. Welcome, Heidi.
Yeah, hi. I can hear you. I can see you. There is a bit of a time lapse, strangely enough, even though I'm here in Thailand, so not very far away from Andrea. But thank you very much for the kind introduction.
Yeah, no, truly. Sometimes you meet teachers as a parent, and they just blow you away. And Heidi is definitely one of them for me. I've seen the work she does. It's really, really phenomenal. And I always felt my boys were very lucky. I think they realise it now. I don't think they realised it at the time. But yeah, so it's really good to have you with us. We're going to mainly talk about community engagement, but not just about that. And actually, some of the former students from UWC Thailand have engaged with the post. So I'm hoping we get a couple here. So I'm going to keep an eye out for from comments. But there you go. Steve's saying Crew Heidi is loved by all her students and their parents. So a true champ. Yeah. So we're going to get stuck into it. And yeah. I wanted to base this off a blog that you published on LinkedIn. It was nearly 2 years ago now, but where you really talked about how to move towards community engagement and social justice within the CAS system, which is an IB part, right? It's a part of the IB program. So let's just start at the beginning. Why is it so important? You know, why are you such a big advocate for community engagement?
Yeah, I'd like to just go back a couple of notches first. Andrea, first of all, you said, you know, the impact I've had on your children's lives. I think that we all have to bear in mind that it's parents, it's students, it's schools. We should be working all together and nobody should be working in silo. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, yes, I am involved in a program called CAS. You know, it is an IB program. It's creativity, activity and service. But I think we need to have that global shift, moving away from the word service to community engagement, which is, I think, what the article is about. You know, this change is really reflecting, you know, awareness, because the term service can be perceived in very, very different ways around the world. Service carries that connotation of charity and hierarchy, you know, where we're serving people, and unintentionally it enforces, you know, that power imbalance and dependencies. You know, and I guess in a religious context, it's about duty, it's about volunteering, and it's like a moral obligation. So it's a really positive movement around the world that we're focusing on community engagement. So I'm trying to advocate for more and more change in that, in our day-to-day conversations. Just make sure that we're being really authentic in what we're trying to do and acting beyond charity and really becoming a contributor in a sustainable, in creating sustainable and equitable change, which I know is very much what you're after in the world, to ground humility and empathy and respect for everybody. So yeah. I just wanted to go back a little bit to frame community engagement, and obviously thank, you know, parents as well, because you play such a huge role in this.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I forgot your first question.
No. So just talking about it from the importance as far as within the children's education.
Yeah. I think community engagement and experiential learning is a true opportunity that AI, you know, something that we're all facing, isn't able to duplicate. You know, we're providing our students real life opportunities, getting them to understand the complexities of the world and their capacity to influence it. So, you know, it's again developing empathy, agency, purpose, getting them to move away just from action to greater awareness. So, you know, I really feel that providing these opportunities, whether it's in an individual subject or in what we call interdisciplinary units, where multiple subjects come together, you know, is really important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that side of it. So at the heart of the work, it's charity, social justice, service, and community engagement. So, you know, there's the doing, But how do you know if it goes beyond the doing and the kids sort of graduate from school and become lifelong sort of advocates for what they learn at school?
Yeah, again, just talking to different schools, you know, they're often talking about, oh, we have so many kids involved in this and that and the other, you know, and it should be more than measuring just by participation. You know, we need to be having a look at how do we measure it through transformation. And for me, it's, you know, the initiative our students are taking. It's when they come to me like, through Heidi, you know, I've got this great idea, you know, I've got a new project, this is what I'd like to do. It's developing those sustained partnerships. It's continuing their advocacy and their involvement beyond graduation. We only see our students for 12 years, and that's a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of life. So the skills that we are setting as foundation, I hope, really enables them to have a positive impact, you know, in the future, and getting them to have that shift from helping others to sort of standing alongside others. And again, you know, it's about equity, it's about access, it's about systematic change, and providing the students the opportunity to understand, you know, what are the root causes of these problems.
Yeah. And I always loved how it was always student-led rather than teacher-led, you know, so that it sort of gave them that opportunity to see the problems that they wanted to solve and coming up with their own solutions, which the school was always behind. So how about some examples where the community engagement model has expanded the academic learning, some, you know, on, say, for specific subjects? Have you got any favorites?
Yeah, I liked what you said. It's all about student agency. It is about student agency, but we give them a framework. Rightly, wrongly, I have a strong opinion that if you just give them carte blanche, sometimes the action never comes out. So, you know, we do provide a framework, and we're really lucky here at UWC Thailand in that we've got, you know, a K-12 curriculum. So those who don't know, that's kindergarten from our very young learners of 2 years old through to the graduation age of 18. So we can have real truth impact. We start with our kindergarten children, and it's all about being part of a community, about empathy, compassion, simple things like sharing. What does good play look like, you know, in the playground? And then as we move up through the primary years, we've got so many fabulous projects. We've got our grade 3 and 4s who are directly connected to environmental projects, understanding all about gibbons. We've got an amazing gibbon rehabilitation program on the island that's doing some fantastic rehabilitation. Been so successful that they've within Phuket, they've increased the number of gibbons in Phuket, and they're now sending the gibbons to Chiang Mai. But, you know, our students really learn about that environmental sustainability and understanding ecosystems and the environment and ethical tourism and conservation. That's our sort of like grade 3s and 4s. Our grade 5s, they get to take 5 days out of school and go and work directly with our NGOs, so really developing a deeper understanding of the day-to-day intricacies of what the NGOs do. From that, they have to have a call to action and raise awareness. So again, very hands-on. Our grade 6s, they create documentaries. So what does that look like? Well, a documentary, what is it? What's their call to action? Is the editing, the videography skills, how does music play an intricate part in watching a documentary? So they learn how to create their own music. So again, you know, taking time to spend time with our community. So they're sort of big picture projects. So then as we move up through the age groups, we've got grade 7s, they work with our elderly centre. And that's all about storytelling, keeping the stories from our past alive. We probably have all got stories from when we're younger that we tell our students, and we love listening to grandparents about their stories. And there's nothing more powerful than when a parent writes in or just, you know, comments on, it's the first time my child has asked to talk to their grandparents, because they've got to interview them. So again, keeping those stories alive, and from that they work with our local elderly centre. And then our senior students, we do a global issues project where they're working teams. They've got a couple of days to really investigate a global issue. They then have to present. It's a bit of a competition, but the top students actually get an award, and that award is about 15,000 baht. They have to use that to implement their projects. So we've got a group last year who were talking all about the conflict in Myanmar, the impact it's having on children. So they wanted to actually set up an educational program. So they've used that funding to do that. I could talk all day about what our students are doing. And I think going back to the previous question, it's all about that transformative but long-term impact. So it's not what they've just done here over those 12 years, it's how they're continuing with their universities.
Yeah. All right. So maybe a good opportunity just to sort of give a clarification of what sets charity, and there's a lot of charity that goes on in Phuket, but what sets it apart from social justice? You know, is there a leaning towards one or the other, or a combination of both?
Yeah, there's definitely a need for balance. You know, act with heart, have a critical lens, and have a long-term vision about what we're doing. So, you know, charity is often talking about that immediate need. Maybe there's a natural disaster. You know, we've had horrendous floods here in Phuket. Even recently, there's been landslides. Oh, please don't think that it's a dangerous place to come, everybody. You know, it's still a wonderful place. You know, during COVID, you know, there were many families that weren't earning money and they needed, you know, that immediate impact of food bags, for example. So charity is responding to the immediate need, and it's about compassion and care in the moment, whereas the social justice is really taking that one step further. It's really seeking to understand the root causes of inequality and injustice, and understanding how our students not only learn about that, but, you know, have the opportunity of the foundation of knowledge to be able to try and act upon it.
Yeah. Are you have you been warned about more flooding with this typhoon coming? Is it going to hit Phuket, or is it going to be more north? Do you know?
Yeah, we've had a number of storms come through. We've had rain. Different areas of Phuket has been flooded. This afternoon, for example, my grade sixes should be hiking around Manik Dam, but there's a high risk of landslide around the area. So again, we've had to adapt our program.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy at the moment. So, you know, you were talking about aligning values and passions and everything, but can you, because I mean, I love these communities, but can you share some of the communities that you're working with, apart from, you know, the Gibbon rehabilitation is awesome, but some of the others, especially the Burmese communities, and how passion and values plays an important role. So what are your favourites?
I think, well, yeah, I've got lots of favourites, but here at school at UWC Thailand, we've got staff who are here because our school has a very strong mission and values aligned, and all our projects, all our partners, again, aligned to those visions. So everything that we're doing is exactly, you know, what we strive to do through our mission statement. So the partners, we've got a number of environmental partners, but our social ones. We've got a children's home down the road that was set up just after the tsunami called Burnham House. And I have groups of students who work with them every Saturday morning on English development, confidence, you know, self-esteem. So through the language of, through teaching language. We've got JD, which used to be called Banya Literacy Centre, which is a local school for Burmese up to the age of 7. So I have grade 8s who have learned all about conflict in Myanmar, who understand what it means to be a migrant, why people move countries, you know, whether it's be financial or social stability. So our grade 8s again work alongside JD, and again develop an understanding and help and support them in any educational needs that they have. We've got projects outside of the island as well. So my grade 11 and 12s will travel throughout Thailand, as far north as Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, and as far west as Sangkhlaburi. Again, very social projects, really concentrating on deepening understanding, communication, understanding that the challenge of privilege that our students have, and really advocating for change. All of them are aligned to say UWC vision and values, but underlying that is our students have an understanding of the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that we're striving to have impact by 2030. So things are rooted in there. We've got students who are one-to-one mentors. So we've got students from all around the world. We've got Afghani girls who are still mentoring their peers online. So yeah, you know, our academic program, our community engagement program goes beyond the academics, but it's also very deep rooted into the academics. Our grade, you know, throughout our diploma program, our students who study global politics can really see, learn about it in class, but then also go out into the field to be able to align their personal values.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose for you guys, UWC has a scholarship program, and about 50% of the kids in year 11 and year 12 are these scholars, and they can come from refugee camps to Nepalese royalty. It's a really wide mix. Whereas one of the things I don't love as much in UWC in Singapore is the scholars aren't, if they're not at the center of the year 11 and 12. So I don't really know who they are and what they do. And I kind of miss that, because it was a really special part of UWC Thailand, because they're incredible kids, right?
Oh, they are incredible. And, you know, when I was talking about my grade 8s who work along JD, the Burmese school, one of the foundations prior to that is understanding, what does education mean? What is the right of education? What does education look like in different countries? So the grade 8s interview the scholars. So what does it mean to be an Afghani girl who's been in underground school? You know, because my grade 8s, they've been in private school for most of their lives. They live a life of privilege. You know, many of them have been here, but they don't understand the real issues that some people have, you know, in accessing education, and what does it actually look like. And it just blows their minds when they actually have a chance to talk to students from conflict zones, or haven't, you know, who have been marginalized, or just because you're a female, you can't be educated. You know, it really riles them. And that then enables them to have a deeper level of passion and understanding of why our partners are really important to us.
Yeah, no, it's very special. So you talk about setting goals, and you say it's really, really important for community engagement programs. So can you share some successes around that by having set the goals?
Ooh, successes. I think, you know, success again is a difficult one to measure. You know, we've got the personal successes of individuals who, when they reflect, they've developed in their personal character, they've made strategic choices of what universities and the types of courses they've gone on to, and then, you know, they're writing back to say that they've got an internship within the UN. You know, so we've got those successes, and that all comes down to, you know, the initial goals that they set within our program. You know, goal setting is so important, because it enables the students to really understand what their personal aims and objectives are. It gives them focus, enables them to reflect and to think about the impact they're having, and holds them accountable. So I think one of the successes, if I go back to like grade 5s, they wanted to set up a doggy daycare. So last year we had 4 students as part of their PYP project. They took dogs from Bodhi Dogs, which is the dog shelter we work with. So they identified a dog that would be suitable, and that dog came to school every single day, and at night they'd go home with one of the students. And it was all about raising awareness of the need for more dogs to be adopted. And as a result, you know, we had the first dog adopted, and then, you know, the second dog. So that is a real success story where, yes, there's 100 dogs in the pound, but 2 of them have now found their forever homes. We work with Sustainable My Cow, a phenomenal organisation just down the road from school, and, you know, we help and support with their beach cleanups and raise awareness. And, that collection of data is a strong driver for some, systematic changes within and on the island. What else do we have? I think for me, the biggest success is what the students are learning from here and then taking it into the future, encouraging them to have that personal accountability and, for them to find that lifelong passion.
Yeah.
So we're still a young school. So, I mean, we're, 14, 15 years old. We've got our 10th graduating cohort coming up. We've got a very small alumni base. So we've got great stories, but, I think we need a few more years to really see that the students who've gone into the UN or the students who've become the doctors or who are, fighting to be a human rights lawyer. So we're still in those early days, but I think personal success, confidence, advocacy, and finding interest is something that, is success.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, so we all worked together very hard during the pandemic because a lot of people were suffering, and one of the things that really struck me was empathy and cultural sensitivity, the way we managed that program. It couldn't be just a bunch of white people with money handing out food. It had to be done in a way that sort of allowed people to have dignity, right? Because nobody could do anything about the situation because it was out of their control. It was a global sort of global mess up, right? So but from your perspective, obviously the children are going to learn a lot from the empathy and cultural sensitivity. But if there's a teacher listening here today who wants to set up a program, what's your advice on that? Like, how do you make sure that's at the center of what you're doing, because it's so important?
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and I think that there needs to be a great deal more empathy and compassion in the world, and it starts with ourselves as well, because I think we're very critical of ourselves as teachers, and we're very critical of all of the programs that we run, because we always want to do the best. One of the things I would really encourage teachers to do is just slow down a little bit. I think often when we're talking about community engagement and helping and supporting, the environment or the community, we're like a helicopter. We come in, we stir things up, and we leave. And that just lets the dust settle, and then people who are cleaning up afterwards is the community. So I think it's really taking time to understand, have foundational knowledge. Before we go out and work with any of our projects, we spend several weeks, when I was talking about the JDR Myanmar community, understanding, do you know where Myanmar is on the map? What do you know? For some of our students, they didn't even know it was a country. So, what is the difference between Myanmar and Burma? Why do we have migrants? Why are the Burmese coming to Thailand? What is driving them out of their own country to spend a significant amount of their time away from their family and their friends? So spending time doing that foundation is so important. So it gives people the opportunity to challenge their own biases and understanding of concepts. It raises a deeper level of awareness. Sometimes we're making assumptions about things, and just taking that time to develop a deeper understanding and education helps remove assumptions and biases. And I'm not going to say that it's all perfect and our students don't have it, because some students will never like working with the elderly. It's a fact. But if we can spend time actually helping them understand the what's, the whys, the hows beforehand, and the storytelling and the importance of it, bringing the curriculum to life, making the learning purposeful, I really think that helps build that cultural sensitivity. Here in Thailand, we have Thai language classes, we have Thai language and cultural classes. So our Thai teachers work alongside us to make sure that we're all working together to help and support our students understand the context that they're going in.
Yeah, it's really important. All right, a couple more, and then I'll ask the guys if they've got any. So you've been. I know that in the 10 years you've been there, it's practically every worthy community in Phuket is now part of the program that you've established, and it's truly phenomenal. And throughout the years, there's all these events and touch points where the whole community, Christmas, there's a big collection. There's so much going on, but like when you think about it over the long term, do you see any places or any of the groups that you work with where you're seeing the deeper systemic changes? Have you anything, or is it still too early, even within a decade?
I think the systemic change has come with our community knowledge. It's come through our participation. But at a structural level, we're still working on that, which is a shame because, I've been here 10 years. One would think that things would be very, very different with Bodhi dogs if you're working with the same community for 10 years. But we've also got a very transient population, whether it be teachers, whether it be students, and particularly with our older students who are really that drive for change as grade 11 and 12. They're here for 18 months.
Yeah.
So I think that awareness, advocacy has definitely got stronger. And if a student can take away what they've learned here to another school and implement ideas, then there has been sort of, I guess, a little bit more global change. I think we've got definitely more commitment. So, for example, one of my grade sixes 2 years ago who did the documentary about Bodhi dogs still participates on our volunteer program every Saturday morning. Yes, is still coming. So that sort of long service award, long participation award is definitely there with Leo. You're hearing it. So if you're here for another 4 more years, Leo, you're going to get that. Yeah, this is where I am equally as critical on myself as I am the process, because I would like to have seen more change so we wouldn't have to do so much with collecting trash off the beach or fundraising for gibbons, because if there was more governmental support, the rehabilitation program for the gibbons would be more funded, not only by the government but sort of worldwide. So slowly, individual, small steps. But I wish I had something big. And this is where another member of staff would probably walk in and say, "Oh, but what about?" So.
It's so interesting that you say that, because the amount of money that must have gone in, and then you look at it from an economic perspective, all the disruptions that have happened just in the time you've been there, right? It's been booming, and then it's bust, and then it's booming again. But at nature's expense, it's booming again. But and we know, living in a place like Thailand, there's only a limited amount of government funding for anything, right? So it's got to be the societal, community coming together, the very rich Thai families taking it on for life, right? It can't be up to the schools. It just can't, right? So, okay, so worldwide, we're seeing a big impact on the education system, especially in wealthy democratic countries. I got so many people in my community and my family and friends who are teachers, and every single one of them in wealthy countries is basically just talking about the demise of education. It's sad to see, especially when you're in Asia and you can see that real investment in education right across the board. So, when my experience as a parent is the 7 years my boys had at UWC Thailand fundamentally changed them, or it gave them access to the best of themselves, right? They're more beautiful beings because of the experience that they had at that school, and I'll always be grateful for it. So I think more schools across the world could benefit from these sort of programs. What would you love to see?
Oh gosh, great question. Great question.
Give us your dream.
My dream. I go back to, I think, one of my very first statements, how important it is to have parents on board. The dream is to definitely have that sort of triangular approach of parents, schools, and students really working collaboratively. Now, Andrea, you were a huge advocate for the program. You know, you've installed all those values into your children and they've just absorbed the opportunities. Unfortunately, that's not what we see all the time. You know, so parenting, you know, there isn't a handbook, you know, it's challenging. But I know that in the modern world, I see a disconnect between parents and students, but also so many different reasons. And it'd be great to get more and more parents back involved in a positive way in students' education. I'd love for experiential learning really to be the core of the education. We know that project-based learning is an exciting opportunity. It's challenging. It really brings the skills and concepts from all the subjects together. So having schools that are taking a more active approach in that, you know, the IB continuum, it enables that through the PYP, the MYP, and the diploma. But there's lots of curriculums out there still that are very siloed. This is just maths and English and languages and science, etc. So interdisciplinary learning, I think, is incredible. And you know, I think that experiential learning and community engagement needs to go beyond just extracurricular. Now, we're really fortunate. We've embedded it into our curriculum. The middle school students here at UWC Thailand has got 100 minutes a week to do all these projects. You know, for example, learning in design how to make a paddle that you're going to use for when you paddle around the island for 9 days when you're on camp. You know, applying real knowledge and application would be fantastic for, you know, for students. You know, these are the things that AI, as I said before, AI can't do. And I think the academics, and we can cultivate passion and agency and intercultural understanding. Students are going to be better global citizens and enable them to be able to, you know, address, you know, the world's issues or the urgent challenges that we are having. So, yeah, values, empathy, action, interdisciplinary, you know, disciplinary approaches, better global citizens, and parents really understanding the values of all of that. You know, that they're learning core skills for the future, above and beyond, you know, the siloed subjects.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, what questions have you guys got? I don't know. David's just said, you know, going. He's actually still got a what, 12-year-old, 13-year-old at school?
14.
14 now. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't get that wrong.
Oh, it's a great age.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It sounds really, really amazing. I love this part. I think you know, I think what strikes me is what tips do you have in sense of kind of any school? You know, you mentioned UWC, which has got a great supporting community in that way. But this aspect, I think, where learning becomes much more.
We've got a supportive leadership team where we were able to sit down and think, right, you know, if this is our vision and values, how are we making sure that it's embedded in what we do? How can we find the time to be able to do some really good projects? And it can be quite maverick in the fact that you've just got to clear the timetable, then start to rebuild it. And that takes a lot of education. It takes time for parents to get on board as well. Whereas now it's almost become, you know, just it's second nature. It's there in our curriculum. Parents aren't questioning it anymore because they're seeing the value of it. And new parents who are coming in, you know, we talk about it as part of, well, it's the same as, you know, doing physical education or having a lunch break. You know, there are these things that automatically happen in our curriculum. So, you know, it's second nature.
That the idea that there was a bump to get people on board, you know, I mean, they're out, you know, from a young age planting mangroves, doing stuff like that, right? It's fantastic. Why wouldn't you want that for your kids?
Yeah. I think we planted. I think it's 20,000 mangroves that we've planted around the coastline of Phuket. Which, for those who don't know, the mangroves get stripped for the prawn farms, and obviously when we had the tsunami, that natural defence, was just stripped away in certain areas of Phuket. So the mangrove is so important, for our local ecosystem. And again, we've got a wonderful mangrove team. So you're talking about impact. There we go. 20,000 mangroves over the last, I think, 8 years. And we've been just awarded additional funding from an organisation called Dream for Trees in the UK. So they're sponsoring £1,000 a year for the next, I think, 3 years to be able to do more and have more impact here. So yeah.
But it's not just planting, right? It's collecting the pods. There's a facility on the school where the primary kids do that.
We have a nursery.
Right?
So we have a nursery. So our beach cleanup group will collect them. Our primary students will repot them. And then, we've got different community groups who go out there and plant. It's almost like a rite of passage, for parents. And now parents are coming along board as well. So gone are the days when I'll quote this, that I had a student 4 years ago when we talked about going to plant the mangrove. The father said, quote, "I do not want my child to go on that smelly, stinky swamp, mosquito swamp to plant mangroves." But
we could have a whole conversation just about your conversations with parents, but it might not be appropriate.
Not for Friday afternoon, Andrea.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do it over wine next time.
Indeed. No, you touched on something that I find incredibly interesting with teachers and education at large, is when old pupils stay in touch. When students that you have once had a relationship with continues to have a relationship either with the people that they encountered or the institution as such. And I was very blessed. I had some phenomenal teachers during my upbringing, and I stayed very much in touch with one of them all the way till he passed away 10 years ago. And that, I think, is something that our traditional education model actually is missing. It's like you come in, you do your bit, now you go away, and there is an additional value, I'm sure, from both parties to actually maintain that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that particularly in our context, we've got 120 boarding students here who are away from home. So they need that significant, adult in their life. It's really important for them to know who to come to, whether it's a dorm parent or a teacher, or even a primary teacher who may coach them, in the part of the football team. Who are the significant people in their lives to be able to, so they can, just offload to go share to go and get advice. And I think having that nurturing opportunity, sorry guys, I'm in the middle of something.
Heidi's at school today.
Yeah, I think that they're here for an interview, and they haven't actually noted that their interview time is a little bit different, so they haven't checked their schedule. So yeah, I think we've all got role models. We've all got people who've played a significant part in our lives, and we are extremely grateful for them. And I think any opportunity that we have for any teacher or any adult, who has that positive relationship with the student is important, however big or small. I think the impact is real.
Yeah, Steve said the best days the boys ever had there was up to their ears in mangrove mud, and he's right. But I remember the stories when they came back from the old people's facility, right? Because that's always challenging for kids. I spent my childhood playing music in old people's homes, so it didn't ever bother me. But but it wasn't just the fact that they were in an old people's home; it was also a fact that the language that was being spoken was different, right? So I'm sure that must be an interesting experience.
Yeah, do you know what? It is really interesting to watch how the students connect with the elders. They don't speak the language. They're from very different cultures. They're both playing Connect Four, and both of them think that they're winning because some of the elders don't know how to play the Connect Four game, and they just think that okay, they're winning, and they say, but they're cheating, and I'm like, well, that's okay. They think they're playing by the right rules, so it's their home turf. Let's just play along with it. Who's having fun here?
Yeah. And then on the other side, it's been renamed JD. So my youngest he really flourished with working with the kids. So that for the same reason, some kids must flourish there, whereas others aren't particularly interested, right?
Yeah, and I think over the time our students have here, we have a real mixture of social and environmental projects. So we're hoping that we give them enough opportunity across the board to be able to realise, well, what is their thing? Is it people? Is it the environment? We've got a student-led cafe that serves drinks every break time. And some of the students just thrive in that, having that connection with the younger students as they're serving a drink. How was your day? Or what lesson have you got next? And you have that really sort of endearing aspect of older students helping and supporting the younger students as well.
Yeah. But the important thing, of course, at the end of everything that you do is the reflection. Like the kids have to do a reflection of it. So can you just talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah. I mean, everything we do, all of my projects, the students will goal set, and the reflection will come from the goals and the opportunities. And my model for reflection, which helps the students really think deep about what they're doing, is facts, findings, feelings, and future, as well as looking at challenging their assumptions, connecting with subjects, considering biases, and considering impact. So they have this model of what I call the 4 Fs and the 4 Cs that enable them to sit down, to really consider. They share the reflections with each other. They take the time to consider not only what's happened, but how are they going to help and support and build into the future. What, as I said, assumptions and challenging, thinking about their own personal privilege is something for them to think about how they can make instrumental or a systematic change in the future.
That's so interesting. Most adults don't know how to do that. Joe, your kids were brought up in the Singapore system. So when you listen to this, what are your thoughts?
I think they kind of had their attention always put on the academic sides of things, So they were really busy with all the work that they had to do. And I think I'm trying to imagine this for a Singapore context, because I think parents in Singapore would have difficulty going like, okay, we're gonna take your time lifting your foot off the pedal and doing some other kind of work in the community. Although what I'm more aware of is as it goes later and later in life, especially on the journey that I had recently with becoming a Singapore citizen, there actually is quite a lot of emphasis on community service. It actually is about giving back, and I had largely not thought that much about it. I was actually curious about the proportions, in terms of how many of the people, or how large a group within the larger group were involved that way. I was thinking about the politics of it, right? I mean, I'm sure that as you get into a school that and to like you said at the beginning, it was not quite the same as it is right now. There's obviously some kind of a politicized. It is a political thing. You actually have to convince. You have to change the culture so that the culture becomes, so that the norm now becomes this. And I'm just wondering about that process, like at the start, how did it feel, especially if it's a UWC, which is largely known as an expat school. And I'm not sure if the emphasis on education, back in an earlier time would have been more important, or they would have seen that as being a more important thing. And when that shift began to happen, as in, do you see it happening? And is there any kind of pushback is happening right now? I mean, the current climate has changed in terms of social service as well.
Originally the UWC Thailand was Phuket International Academy, and we had a different cohort of parents then. So when we changed to UWC Thailand, I think there was a real shift in the mentality of the parents, the understanding of what UWC meant, the opportunities UWC doors would provide students for the future. So there was a shift, and it took a few years, and it sounds really critical, but some of the parents who weren't quite buying into the UWC mission and values, it took them a few years to work out, actually, we're in the wrong place. So then there's a turn in the tide. You've got more and more parents who are coming here because they really value what UWC stands for. It is an opportunity for us constantly to embed and revisit what we're doing, why we're doing it, and ensuring that there is a justification. We have 11 values of what we want our students to look like when they graduate. And everything our students do from kindergarten all the way through to grade 12 is embedded. So when parents come and say, I don't want my child to go on camp, or I don't think going to the elderly home is right, or actually I don't want my child to go sailing when it's raining. We are in a position to be able to have conversations to say, look, this is what you signed up for. This is, there's no secrets, so, we want you to embed what we're doing. We want you to buy in and support your child's journey. So it's great when our leadership team is willing to have those conversations. And I think not every school is willing to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to confess, for me in Singapore, and knowledge of the brand, we don't know much about the brand. We just know we know the students from UWC. So in Singapore, the reputation of the students, they're a little bit more fun loving, shall we say? So we got the impression they were not so well behaved and what have you. So I must say that we don't know the brand of UWC really well, as in what United World College really stands for. I just thought it was 3 letters. I thought that was the meaning of it in terms of the word. I'm actually finding out today how much deeper United World College actually is as an ethos.
Well, they're up for a Nobel. They've been up for a Nobel Peace Prize for the last couple of years. But Heidi, share where UWC came from initially, just to give people a sense.
Yeah. Well, first of all, our mission statement is UWC makes education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. So it was founded in the 60s by Kurt Hahn. So Kurt Hahn was in Germany, went up to Gordonston in Scotland and set up primarily a boys' school at the time to try and get students to be, A, connect, B, to be sustainable, C, to be able to have more of an adventurous lifestyle and have experiential learning, post-war. Then it was a movement from the school in Gordonston down. They sailed down the west coast of the UK to Atlantic, to Wales, and they set up at Atlantic College. So Kurt Hahn is the founding father, a very strong mission and value aligned with that mission statement I just recited. And it spread throughout the world. Now we've got 18 locations, all around the world. It's really just I think the area that we don't have is really Australia, New Zealand, sort of Australasia, sort of that area, but throughout Europe, America, South America, Asia. So it is, it's got a long history from the 60s, and Kurt Hahn was also the founding father of the International or the Duke of Edinburgh Awards as well, which again is challenging students to learn new skills, go on adventurous activities, maintain physical fitness and participation, give back to the community. And there's another program called Round Square as well. So there's many international programs that come from the Kurt Hahn philosophy that maybe people just don't know about. And as a result, he was one of the again founding fathers of the International Baccalaureate, which hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students around the world graduate with.
Yeah, and it's also about developing future leaders post World War II, so that we wouldn't go back to war. That was something else that really appealed to me. Yeah. Any final questions? I'm sure. Are you going to stay with this, or do you need to go, Heidi?
Yeah, I've got an interview to do with some kids who like knocking down the door, and I'm like, no, you're early. You're early. So,
kids being early, that must be a novelty. I don't think I was ever in time for anything during my formative years.
Well, yeah, that's one of my little quirky things. Please be on time and respect people's time. So actually, it's not a quirky thing. It's just just manners.
It's common sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But anyone?
So
no? Yeah. Got your questions in, Heidi. Thank you so much. So thanks so much for all you do. I've personally seen the impact, and it was a great honor to be part of your world when I was there. So just wanted to make sure that other people knew about it. So thank you. And why next time you're in Singapore, or vice versa?
Yes. Yeah. Could confirm. Thank you everybody for this opportunity. And just a quick shout out. I know around the world there are many what we call national committees who are looking for the up and coming new students to apply for United World Colleges. So just Google it, look at applications wherever you are in the world, because it is a phenomenal opportunity for a young student, 16 to 18-year-old, to be part of the movement.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
All
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And
you.
Oh, dropped you out too quick. Yeah, so she's pretty special lady, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve and I always feel very grateful that we've been able to give our kids this education. Cost us obviously, but making sure that they're all right. Because to me it's I hear what you say, Joe. So the biggest challenges that we have at UWC in Thailand, I'm not as switched on to what's going on here. I'm not as invested in the school here as I was there. It's just year 11 and 12 coming into the school at that point. It's kind of too late. But the families from India, Singapore, Malaysia, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, the emphasis is very much on the education. Right, and so there's a lot of pushback on a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today, just because we know that's the culture of this region, right? But when I've also watched those communities sort of really embrace it as well, and seen that evolution, because I think it raises whole humans rather than just smart humans or talented humans, whole humans, and the kids, Jax. He was born with rugby thighs and rugby shoulders, right? So when he turned up at the Burmese schools, they're like half his size, at the same age, right? And he's sort of just watching the kids sort of playing with these kids from another culture who, don't have anything. They just don't have anything. And we donated all the Legos that we'd ever been given, because neither of the boys were ever interested in Lego, ever.
Wow.
But every birthday party we got Lego. And so I had these enormous boxes of Lego unopened, and
your feet are so lucky.
Oh, I know. I'm so grateful. But I sent a bunch to one of my nephews who does love Lego, and for the rest, I just put it in this huge box and gave it to the school And so Jax would go to the school and play with Lego with these kids. That was the only time he ever played it. But yeah, it completely transformational, you know. Yeah. So I'm glad we could bring education into the conversation.
Well, education is paramount. It's incredibly important, because if it's done well, it will be the biggest asset you have ever acquired.
Yeah.
I think the real challenge right now is how to design education so that it actually fits the world that we're currently sending our kids into. Because I think traditional education has always been good at creating people who or creating a workforce that was good at one thing, and I think the future is about being good at many things.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was interesting how many times Heidi was saying AI can't do that. You know, so a lot of the stuff that she was talking about, I thought that was a really interesting perspective too.
I mean, I think you have a school around the corner which is fantastic for the kids and stuff, and you know, it's £40,000 a year for, you know, kind of like a primary school sort of thing. UWC Atlantic in Wales is $150,000 a year.
Yeah, but it's only 2 years, right?
Yeah, but you know what?
Yeah.
It may be for 2 years, but where do you, I mean, you know?
Yeah.
The
But they're different schools.
It's
But that's boarding. That's 100% boarding school and all that sort of stuff.
It's just the thing is the sticker price. I mean, you know what happens? What happens is, how does the school that's a, you know, ordinary sort of community, a school in a community, address these things and shape yourself in these things. And
but just want to point out, so the price tag is different everywhere based on the country.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying a boarding school in the UK may be like, you know, £60,000 a year, and UC Atlantic is 100,000, over 100,000.
Yeah.
UWC Atlantic. So even just like for like,
right,
is double that price.
Okay, so the other side of things is the kids, the scholars, right? So I used to do lots of career stuff at the school, and I remember this one young lady from Iraq told me she wanted to be a vet, and this is a few years ago, and I'm like, what sort of a vet do you want to be? And she wanted to be a vet for pets. And I said, and there was still a lot of violence in Iraq at the time. And I'm like, you got a lot of pets on the streets in Iraq at the moment? And she's like, no, but there will be, you know, in the future, you know, people from refugee camps. So if you think the wealthiest families who can afford this education to pay for it, because you can also apply to be a scholar, the wealthiest kids who can afford to pay it are sitting next to kids who come from such an extreme opposite from an education perspective. You know, it's like you can't walk out of that and be an elitist. You just can't. Whereas the typical public school in the UK where you board, I mean, everyone's basically from the same category, right?
Yeah, or you know, my daughter's school where in her class they had this thing along about, you know, kind of who comes from where,
yeah,
kind of thing, and it turns out that only one person was in some sense kind of like, you know, born in, you know, fully British in that way, had both parents who were British, but their grandparents weren't, and you know, she's got her classmates, people from Eritrea, it's got people from Italy, it's got people from you know, kind of the Philippines, it's got people from South America and everywhere. And this is a school which is just a school in Hammersmith.
Oh, that's great.
But that's what I'm sort of trying to say. When you go to a school which already has all of that community around, because you're in a place like that, how do you actually allow the curriculum and the approach towards it to be, in that sense, different in that way?
Yeah.
And whereas we tend to think of it as, I think it has been good in that sense to be able to create that, and those sort of schools and history of those sort of schools. But as Joe is saying, kind of our world is changing.
Yeah.
And if you look at the UK, people can't afford boarding schools because there's now VAT on top of it. It's kind of, you know, or those sort of things in that way, and so they end up becoming very different in that way too. So where is education really going to? What I want to bring out actually is this aspect of embedding the extracurricular into the curricula.
Yeah.
You know, the best way to learn physics is not to learn the formula, to build something. And the best way to build something is to have someone to build it for.
Yeah.
And that's how you also learn about your marketing and your communications and your languages. And that's where you get the connection with the society, the history, and appreciation of geography. And those are very practical embedding that any school can do. There's a mentality shift towards that. And it actually doesn't cost anything to bring it about that way. Or you can actually make that so that you turn every school into a place where children learn, where they can develop their economic presence, have that sense of belonging, and appreciate, you know, we all move differently in that way too. So I think the great thing about it is actually almost like a handbook of how we talk to parents. You know, I think that's probably the most valuable thing that Heidi can give to every school, to the head of every school, to the, you know, kind of the year heads and so on. You know, this is how we talk to the parents as an example, because they all face the same questions, but our answers are structured in this way.
I think the biggest challenge in education, really, at least in Singapore, as I see it, is it's a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders who are not qualified, who want to be a part of the conversation, and they go and they approach it quite from a populist perspective, right? So they hear how it's done and how everybody else is doing. And so, you know, you have stories of schools that try new things and go like, okay, we will try not to have any homework for the first 2 years. And what you get in response is parents who are worried and complain about that. Or for the first 2 years, there are no exams, and that's something to complain about. And it's being pushed by, you know, like I have friends who talk about being very stressed about their kids being in school. And I kind of realized what it was about myself versus them and why I wasn't caught up in it. And basically it was because I didn't join the WhatsApp groups. You know, I wasn't on that continuous barrage of, oh, there's this and there's that and whatever it is. I mean, and to be fair, I also missed a lot of things along the way, right? But I think the pressure wasn't. Yeah, the pressure wasn't coming, you know, from the school. The school wasn't making you do something, but there wasn't in the end. It build, the pressure builds because the parents are pushing as well. They're putting higher standards. Teachers are having to meet different standards, and I think one of the things that I've always thought that should be implemented in education is actually some kind of a thing where they, especially now when we got these, I think where jobs are going to be displaced in other fields, we need to bring some people out of regular business and handle the admin side of things, because most of the teachers that I know are bogged down by admin. And I'm sure if we could move, you know, some of the population and have maybe on a one-to-one basis, have every teacher have an admin, you know, that is an admin assistant, like in university, I guess they have their teaching assistants. That would could help in terms of making the teaching experience a better thing, and then it would allow the teachers, of course, to focus more on the teaching experience, to try to work on better learning outcomes as well.
Yeah, especially I've got a lot of my community in teaching, especially in Australia. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty what's going on, you know. And the parents, I mean, I was saying, Richard, as a parent, you missed all the WhatsApp parenting groups, which are horrendous. Seriously horrendous. I mean, I've seen some bullshit in my life, and they take the cake. So I'm looking forward to being at the end of that. I can assure you. But yeah, all right. Should we move on to the news?
We should. There's been a lot happening.
There has, and I'm going to start with the things we're not going to talk about, which they haven't seen yet, because I do that on purpose so that we can get a little bit of a surprise factor in. So an interesting piece of news is Tucker Carlson interviewed far right or extreme right, whatever, Christian nationalist Nick Fuentes. He's a lovely guy, king of the gropers. Anyway, it's created a massive backlash within the GOP, and I mean really big. Like the whole founders of Project 2025 are up, and 85% have walked out, and all sorts of stuff. So I've always sort of looked at these coalitions on the right in the US as being so out of alignment ultimately that they're going to fall apart. Well, it looks like we might be seeing the beginnings of this, because the right-minded right-wing voters will see sense eventually. Maybe they already are. So that's a good sign, and that's where I get my hope. By the way, when people think it's all falling apart, there's a coalition in the US that is very strange, and they don't make good bedfellows. But former VP Dick Cheney died this week, which has obviously got a lot of different responses. And the current VP, JD Vance, well, his marriage is under extreme scrutiny after an intimate Erica, Kirk moment. I'm sure we all saw that. Scientists have apparently miscalculated the population of humanity by a large number, and apparently they didn't calculate all the people that live in rural areas. So I thought that was interesting. Earlier this week, not a funny one, there was a terrible stabbing on a train in the UK. It's just horrendous. I'm actually wondering at some point they're going to probably have to have metal detectors on public transport if they haven't already. In Kenya, they had a devastating landslide in the Rift Valley. More than 24 are dead, with many more missing. There was another earthquake in Afghanistan, and that's like 3 in the last couple of months, 6.3, 6.2. A mayor in Mexico was assassinated, and a man groped the president of Mexico, and I'm really happy to see that she's going to take him to court. Australia has been experiencing some very weird and freaky extreme weather events, storms. Drinking water in Tehran could be out within the next 2 weeks, and Cheyenne has banned all sex dolls after outrage in France. And I don't know if you saw images of these dolls, but they look like little girls. They're very, very yuck. And Russia has decided it is now looking at resuming nuclear tests after Trump announced that he was going to do the same. So awesome. Anyway, that's the main news. So anything else that jumped out at you guys that I didn't mention?
Something we're not going to talk about, but really recommend people to go and find it and have a look. In the BBC website, they have this thing on Inside Gaza, where a journalist went in there and some pictures along there. So don't want to really go on about it because I think we all know, but I think you need to go and see it.
But don't you think, David, it's a bit weird, right? Israel is constantly saying they're honouring the peace agreement while constantly bombing and killing in Gaza and Lebanon. So they're not honouring the peace agreement, but by constantly saying they are, it's like the whole world's kind of step back and go, it's all right now because there's peace. But
I think what it is, this is my own opinion. Okay, so for what it's worth, and it's really important to really kind of think that this might actually be what's going on. So in leading into the peace agreement, what you had was that Samud flotilla with like 1,000 boats going towards it.
Yeah.
And they'd been going arresting people, but it was hitting the media and it was getting out there along. And I firmly believe that you will get more of those. And then came the peace agreement, which effectively told everybody to back off and say, we got to give it the benefit of the doubt. Is there really any intention for peace? Well, that's why I go and have a look at that shots, those things on that BBC News on Inside Gaza.
Yeah.
When you look at what that looks like, you have to ask, is there actually any intention for peace?
Yeah, it's a very strange sort of situation. Richard, Joe, anything else that jumped out that you?
No,
man, I get all my news from this show.
Oh, that's also the $1 trillion paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh no, we've got that later.
There is.
We got that
Yeah.
one. Richard? I think.
No, I think there's been a lot, and we're going to talk about it more, obviously, but there's been a lot of natural disasters on a scale I can't really ever remember coinciding in so many different parts of the world. And because of everything going on, they're not particularly widely covered in media.
Yeah.
Well, we've also normalized it. I mean, it's no longer the news.
Of course, and that is true for anything that comes in certain frequency that you kind of dumb down and you get a bit numb to it. But I'm quite taken aback by how geographically widespread we have these kind of news at the moment.
It's called climate change.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
but you're also starting to look at very, very freakish events taking place, right? That we know happens, but no one has ever really thought is related to climate change, and they're still taking place. So, yeah, I'm a little bit
but that's
more than intrigued, right?
That's why it's the shit show.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Exactly.
For people who didn't think it was appropriate that we call it a shit show, trust me, it's appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to just disappear for a couple of minutes, but we had a blue wave in the US, and I got to tell you, I'm finding the media coverage around this week complete and utter nonsense. Every now and again, something actually insightful sort of pops in, but is it a sign? Is it not? Look, what anyone want to sort of share their takeaways?
I think the pivotal part about this blue wave or failure of it, as it may turn out to be or not, is the budget shutdown. That's being pitched as, kind of Democrats can't do it. The Democrats are saying the Republicans won't negotiate, but the people in the middle are really beginning to hurt.
Yeah.
The food supplement payments are cut. Flights are now being cut. So commerce and travel, and all the agriculture services, all sorts of things are going to be going there. And it's never gone this far before.
No, so, we're way into uncharted territory compared to historical shutdowns.
So and the Republicans media is actually kind of doing its job in blaming everything on the others, and that's what they do on the other side. And the question is, which side would people? It's not so much who they believe, but who they're actually going to blame or not blame in that way.
Yeah, I think we're about to find out. I think politically it was kind of interesting what happened this week. I would put it down to the traditional kind of protest vote when you're into, yeah, exactly. You're into a new regime. Things have not panned out the way you hoped for or you were promised, obviously. So now you cast your protest vote by voting for the other side. I think it's extremely unlikely for me that the Democrats will take the White House in 3 years' time unless they get their shit together. Because the people they are touting as running for president are all unelectable.
And I think that budget shutdown can really hurt them.
Absolutely. And we don't really know what the voter verdict will be if this continues into Christmas, right? And for the Americans, you first have Thanksgiving, which is a hugely important moment. And for some people, even bigger than Christmas. So you're getting into a point of the year where if you don't actually have money to spend, it's going to be pretty grim. So I think a lot of things we're about to see you will not be able to model or predict if you're kind of in the macroeconomic space. But so far, I would put it down very much to a protest vote because I didn't receive what I was promised. And if the Democrats are going to carry this and make real headway, and effectively be able to compete in 3 years' time, they need to figure out which direction they're going to go with, and they need to put someone in line that actually is electable.
Well, I think so what Andrea, what we was commenting is that what you have coincidentally with this blue wave in that way is the US budget shutdown.
Yeah.
And depending on how people come out of the US budget shutdown, you're going to get this you're going to see whether this blue wave actually just fizzles out or whether it builds in that way. But the essence of this budget shutdown is really going to start hurting people.
Yeah, the shift in the Latino vote was kind of an interesting side of the story for me as well, because obviously that was a big shift towards the Republicans. I don't know. When I look at you guys get this stuff. I don't. I just look at it from just trying to make sense of the world perspective. But I look at the economic sort of story that's happening and all the stuff that's happening underneath, and how I think it was 3% of GDP is held up by the AI investment. And just today, before we jumped on, Sam Altman was talking about the government investing, or not investing. What's the word? Putting money into AI to sort of shore it up and all that sort of stuff. And I shared a video with you guys last night of somebody's perspective that there's all these things happening underneath, and I don't know, we don't have the government data because it's not being released. No. There's all these sort of, but at the end of the day, that if the people who are at the supermarket buying their groceries, filling their gas tanks, are only seeing it going up and losing their jobs, or the people in their communities losing their jobs, or they're being snatched off the street, or all that sort of stuff. I mean, eventually there's going to be, I don't know, I'm wondering at what point do the people in the US actually stand up and protest, or when do the blue states say, Mandami's being threatened with no federal funding, when we all know that a huge part of the money that goes into the federal government comes from the blue states. So when are the blue states going to say, all right, we're not going to fund the federal government? When is that sort of a revolution going to happen? Those sort of things. I mean, I think we might still feel like we're far off that, but this is the times we're in, significant radical change.
Well, that's what I'm saying about the budget shutdown. That's what the Democrats is basically saying. This is our way to actually have that power to try and cause that kind of is trying to create a shutdown deliberately in that sense. But the consequence of the shutdown is that it is going to hurt the people who needs the support of the federal government most.
Yeah. And they also need their healthcare later, right?
And that's the issue, is this part where at what point does the fact that I can no longer get any food a lower priority than the healthcare I can't afford that I don't have anyway? There is a whole bunch who don't have that level of healthcare anyway. Yeah. So there's a layer above them which have it. And in this way, so what's going to be great as a result?
Yeah. I mean, the whole SNAP argument to me, right? So you're seeing the revolting conversations, get off your ass, get a job. And then you see these people being interviewed and they've got 3 jobs. And you kind of listen to it, and it's like, at what point do the people who say get off your ass and get a job, are they going to say to the people who own the companies who pay these people, why don't you pay them enough so that they don't need SNAP benefits? So 1 in 8 Americans.
Yeah.
1 in 8. That's, and apparently it's not a socialist country, but 1 in 8 Americans need SNAP benefits. That's shameful for the world's richest country on earth, right?
Well, it is the world's richest country on earth because of that.
Yeah.
It's a hugely exploitative country in every way. I mean, that's how it's the richest country.
Yeah, right. That's yeah. Joe, have you jumped in?
No, I was thinking about the whole situation right now and how it's kind of winding up, like a toy, and all the things that are happening simultaneously are good for both sides, and it's a question of when that tripwire finally goes and which way the momentum is at that particular time. Because if you look at what's happening now, I think the Republicans have a very, very, very interesting situation where the because of the closure of government, they're blind to a lot of the indicators that are sort of happening. So you can't, like the job numbers were heading and trending in a bad direction just before the shutdown, and then they fired somebody because the numbers were bad, and then the numbers were about to come out, and then there was a shutdown. Because as a trader, it's one of the numbers that I look out for, and it was not available, and it hasn't been available for the last month. There's no employment information coming out. So the bad news is being muted, so to speak. And I think in terms of the tension that's building up, there's just enough in terms of alternate ways of funding and finding your way and sustaining yourself to create a real debt crisis. I think because I think already many Americans are in debt, and I think what's going to happen in this particular part of the story is there's going to be a lot of it that's going to be put on credit, and then it's going to go into this spiral where it's it's going to cause a follow-on problem because of the high interest rates that they have on private credit, not at national level, and it's all going to come to a head at a very interesting time. And I thought one other thing was quite interesting is if everything is a little bit depressed at this point, it may actually sort of help inflation seem less bad at this particular point, right? If you decrease the amount of money in the market, so to speak, that should have a deflationary sort of thing, and that could be the great cover for how the tariffs aren't so bad after all. So everybody's got something to play for here in terms of keeping this going. The Republicans, I think, would like to keep it, or at least I think President Trump would like to keep the keep the shutdown going because of these factors. And I think he's holding, he's kind of like holding the Democrats, getting the Democrats to be his partner in a sense, keeping it shut down and for their own interests. So both sides really have an interest to do it, and I think they're both keeping track of the favorability scores as well. Because while largely it's been blamed on the Republicans, the creep is coming in right now where the Democrats are being blamed for the shutdown. And one of the interesting things for me has been, I think the Democrats wanted to get it across this line 1st November, so that the pain of the shutdown, in terms of the things that they're fighting for, would hit the market, so that the audience would then go, "Oh, I see what's happening now in terms of healthcare, for instance." I mean, you're right that if you don't have money for food, it's terrible. But at the same time, you get this one more twist of the knife, really, where you go like your healthcare that used to be, and I've been hearing stories of people who used to pay $80 to $100 maybe, and suddenly they're going to $400 a month, and for them it's just not viable. At the same time, on the flip side of it as well, there's also been other people who are caught in the middle. There's those people who are running businesses, small businesses, and healthcare has been affordable healthcare has been terrible for them because they've had to pay much more in terms of their healthcare as well. So because it's mandatory for them, they can't not pay it. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's not, healthcare isn't as great a story as everyone thinks, because it's one thing to just to have the access to it, and then there's also the implications of it. I've got friends who are in business in America, and for them the healthcare costs, and they're self-employed. They don't have other employees, so they're self-employed, and they have mandatory contributions that they have to make, and their healthcare costs without going to hospital is phenomenal. So it's unenviable what they're facing right now. But both sides really have a good reason not to come to the table. And yeah, the American people are kind of hanging in the middle in the balance. That number of 1 in 8 eating food stamps, that's really that's a surprise for me.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, and I think what is not being calculated right now or taken into account really well is the fact that despite the Republicans having the control of the country, and of course therefore the military, someone's not calculating who the military is related to, as in like the families, and somebody is always, you've got somebody who's not in the military who affects the military. And I think that's if you're talking about 1 in 8 Americans, that's a pretty high chance someone knows somebody who's hurting.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a given.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think both sides so far are playing it very cagey because they still think that the shutdown will be blamed on the other guy. And for me, the jury is still out where that kind of pendulum eventually swings over. But both sides have reasonable arguments for prolonging it at the moment and thinking they will actually come out better on the other side. But I'm fairly sure that the US economy is in much, much worse shape now that headline numbers are depicting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the big surprise we're waiting for, right? All right, so moving on to the other side of the planet where people are also suffering, but in a different way. So we've had Typhoon Kalmaegi, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. The flooding and landslides are now set to hit Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. So far, 3 reportedly dead in Vietnam, where it hit last night. And I've seen up to like 160s plus dead in the Philippines. So most of the deaths are from extreme flooding, not from the actual typhoon. My understanding is that it hit as a Category 1, which isn't a crazy amount of wind. But even then, with the extreme flooding that came off the back of it, a lot of the residents were saying they've never seen anything like it. And now this is a typhoon-prone country, right? Typhoon-prone country. For them to say they've never seen anything like it, the word unprecedented, of course, comes up again. Whole communities have been wiped out. And the worst news that could possibly happen is there's another typhoon brewing, and it's a super typhoon. And we're expecting to see the impact of that over the weekend. When I first started hearing about it, it was talking about, so the big impact is sort of south of Manila, and they're talking about this one, the super typhoon, being north. But there's also possibilities it could potentially hit a similar area, but we don't know. So, I just wanted to ask, how do these sort of countries keep facing such a battering and move forward? The people in this part of the world are resilient like no other, not Singaporeans, of course, but in the rest of this region. But, when do we hit societal collapse? Have we already? So Vietnam was hammered by floods in provinces that include the former royal capital Hue, which is a beautiful place, and Da Nang and Hoi An faced terrible flooding as well. So, when you sort of think about, then this next event happens, it's not in the same area, but, how do you have the resources? So you've got the military already out doing everything that they can. The rescue operators, we lost 8 people in the Philippines in a rescue helicopter crash because it was the weather was so unpredictable. Food, water aid, just getting the electricity back up and running. And you've got to remember it's really hot in this part of the world. It's supposed to be moving into the cool season. It doesn't feel like it's cooling down at all. And if you've got people without electricity for days, weeks, months, sitting in this sort of extreme heat, we could be looking at heat stroke deaths. Obviously, waterborne diseases are a real risk. Deaths due to medical infrastructure breakdown. So it just gets, so when I look at these events, I'm not just looking at the event. It's like, what else is happening in the country? What has happened in the country? The same area of the Philippines got hit by a couple of major earthquakes. So the long-term ramifications. What do you guys think?
I think we touched upon it last week in Jamaica when Melissa obviously had spread some devastation. And personally, I can't see investment coming back in. I really cannot. If you're a tourist-dependent country, which Jamaica is in many regards, I think that that part of your economic outlook is closed. Because I cannot see the investment coming back in. When this is considered a new normal, you can basically not afford the insurance premiums protecting you from these kind of events. Or if, you can even find them, someone underwriting that insurance. Now, Vietnam is getting increasingly a tourist destination. So I can see a similar story evolving there. I don't think Philippines are quite that leap of where tourism is such an important part of the economic sort of structure. But it will have enormous ramifications going forward, because I don't think you can find investment when this is perceived as being the new normal.
Agricultural impact.
Huge, right? You're going to keep on having massive crop devastations and lower crop yields because of these structural pressures. And you've already had huge pressures on farmland in these regions being converted for tourism.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of... Sorry?
I was going to say it's I agree with you in all those things. I think the hits are bigger in many ways. Cebu is a major tourist kind of area. It's this main kind of tourist thing for tourism in Philippines, Jamaica, and I think it hits people the other way as well. For the people who have booked, they're now going to have to rebook. And wherever they want to rebook to, their prices have just gone up.
Yeah.
So that's how it hurts you, even though you are not there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I did a post, I was thinking, we talked before about Bill Gates and what he's thinking about and all the rest of it. We spoke when we were on the Climate Crisis Club. And I had a kind of thought that basically what is the world his view is consistent with is one where effectively the investment and equity markets continue like they have done for the past 20 years. So I'd look at what that looked like and look, the kind of tiny little effective glitches, but absolutely fantastic. The World Equity Index increased. It got to a dip of like 29 or something on the equity index on the thing I was looking at, and it's now currently at 140. So do the maths kind of thing. Between kind of 2008 and now. It's 2009 and now. And that's the world view. That's the view that says everything is fine, because they believe that everything is fine, and that's what they see. And what Richard is saying there in that way is, actually, I don't see how you can build in this. Actually, I don't see how you can ensure this. Actually, I don't see how the mechanism of this works. And as a consequence, even if you're not involved in those places, when you start thinking about, I'd really love to get a holiday because the stress of life is so terrible. That social stress is really increasing. The mention of the stabbing. I was in a cafe, a Pret Manger, kind of cafe, just basic sort of thing. $1, £1 filter coffee. That's why I go there. It's a fantastic deal. Because the next coffee is £4, and it's the same thing as far as I can tell. So I'm like one of these people. I can't tell the difference between the £5 bottle of wine and the £500 bottle of wine, but Richard can tell me all about the difference.
Dear.
But so the social stress is increasing, and you want those stress reliefs, and the price of all those things have gone up. And they've gone up because you want that holiday, and you now can't really afford the places where you can be more certain of what the weather will be like.
Well, and you can't even guarantee that, right?
No.
Exactly. So there are fewer and fewer places to kind of where do you book skiing so that where there will be snow?
Yeah.
Very tricky.
Where do you book a beach holiday where you won't get sunstroke?
Yeah. No, it's it's an interesting time, and one of the things that I'm always a bit blown away by is, like even what you were saying about Bill Gates, like, if this happens, all of these other things happen. And we don't hear a lot of that, with that connecting the dots of this story. And that's what really bothers me, because, of course, Wales got flooded. And, like, I'm in a warm part of the country. When it floods, I've got some friends in Phuket flooded yesterday. They're up to their waist in water. In Wales, although it is the highest temperature for Guy Fawkes since temperatures have ever started. There was Indonesian flooding that killed 15, and that was in Borneo. Barcelona, there's been some flooding. We're talking about the landslide in Kenya. I mean, these extreme events are really off the chart. But the other thing I wanted to come back to is after last week when we spoke about Hurricane Melissa, and Richard, you really struck me with your comment about this is over for the country. And then after the show, we found out that Jamaica had invested in what was it called? A
cat bond. A cat bond, yeah, a catastrophe bond.
A catastrophe bond, right? So basically, at the time, and even to this day, we don't really know that what the cost estimated. They've gone from a quarter to a third of the GDP up to 2 to 3 times the GDP. So we still don't know that. This cat bond will deliver immediately. It's probably already been paid out. 150 million US to the country. But some of the costs I've seen are up in the $80 billion range.
Yeah.
And of course, that could be in Jamaican dollars rather than US dollars. So, but that's not always clear, right? So can we talk about cat bonds, how this will actually matter to Jamaica right now, but also moving forward?
It's pretty much like any kind of insurance that you buy to immunize yourself. David is far better at explaining the actual technicalities of the bond than I am, but it works pretty much like an insurance. If you get hit by adverse effects, you get the payout from this. They are quite popular.
Well, I think we start by I think it's useful to start by why it got there rather than normal insurance.
Yeah.
Because normal insurance is you go to a company which is an insurance company. And so what you rely on is the insurance company being able to pay you when something happens. So you look at an individual company and you think, well, if I'm a Jamaican company, I should not go to a Jamaican insurance company to insure me if something happens.
No.
For very obvious reason, the company will bankrupt as soon as something like this strikes. So you then have to sort of start saying, well, where can I go to and where should I go to in that way? So you then sort of then ask, actually, what is the value to the person insuring you or paying you out an insurance? And what you have is this aspect that actually you're going to pay them an annual premium. And that now looks like what you get if you go and lend money to people, basically. When you lend money to people, you get an annual interest that you pay back. Because there's a chance that something catastrophic can happen, you can charge a higher interest. So that's what happens when you lend to a company, because the company can go bust and they charge a higher interest in that way. And when they go bust, you tend to find that they're not going to pay you the total of what they can pay you back. So that's forfeited in that way. So now that sort of says, great, that means that if I have an arrangement where I trust Joe and I go to Joe and says, look, I'm going to lend to Andrea and you keep hold of that money. If everything goes well with her at the end of the period and during all that period, Andrea will pay you some money and you pass that on to me after your fees, of course. And anything should happen, you give Andrea the amount that I've lent you, I'll put to you. If at the end of it, nothing happens, you give it back to me. And now you have a system that anyone can lend into. So any person can be a part of this, which is the nature where it now becomes what's a bond, because a bond is an agreement over a set of cash flows where anyone can be a part of. So that's why the cat bond structure created to ensure insurance, because anybody can be a part of this. It's a matter of saying, I know Jamaica is exposed to hurricanes. So instead of getting like a 2% on the amount I earn every year for the next 10 years, I would really like 15% or 20% or whatever it is, because I've got a much higher chance of losing it. And that's how that CAN-BOS structure works. And the insurance company, Joe, is great because he gets a fee and he's not really having to worry about what happens if the thing happens anymore, which is kind of the ideal insurance thing. You know, I'm in there in the middle and it's all doing well. So that sort of gives an explanation. The problem now is, of course, as we're saying, this is now almost a certainty. You don't lend money to certain loss, so you've got a problem.
Yeah. I think what's also interesting is the mechanism that they attach to the payouts. Because normally, what happens with insurance is you have to make your claims after the fact. And with this particular bond, what they did was it was tied to certain metrics, right? So it was the pressures and stuff like that, and basically the metrics of the storm basically triggered a full payout. So it's a much more efficient way of delivering the spirit of insurance. But you're right about that. As in, like, it becomes this one thing that people go like, okay, it's an improbable thing, and more it's going to become more probable. And then where does can you find a buyer for the risk?
It becomes unaffordable for you to try to buy that insurance the other way.
Can I ask you guys? So they've got 150 million, so they can maybe fix their roads infrastructure. Maybe, I don't know how far 150 million will go. So potentially could get moving faster. But what about the next storm? Like, so can they go and invest in another? What about the other countries in the region? Like, so I suppose it's that down the track sort of.
So this is where the trigger can become a problem also. So this type of insurance called parametric insurance is basically based upon the parameters of an event, rather than having to have someone to go around and actually say, yeah, this building is falling down. Yeah, no, that one's still okay. I'll only pay you that much for this one. So effectively, it just says in a kind of broad sweep, if the wind is above this, the central pressure is whatever it is, and it crosses over these territories, then we insure you for so much. Which sounds great. But the problem with that sort of parametric insurance is that in order for the insurer to protect themselves, they need the triggers to go up. Yeah. Basically. So what you then have is you have a situation where everything is weakened by these storms. The next one comes along, and if it didn't do the damage, and this is the thing about catastrophe insurance, is very often, it's like earthquake insurance and so on, is that it's the succession of impacts that really is a problem. Your house, the tiles are loosened by the first storm. The next one, which may be half the strength, rips them off because they've been loosened by the first storm. And the next one can come along a long time after, but they will still be loosened because you don't know they've been loosened. No one goes around checking every tile on their roof after a storm. They just take a look at it and think it's okay.
Yeah.
And so you end up kind of raising the level of the trigger because you fear the bigger thing. And so you're not actually insured.
Yeah.
So parametric insurance has its own problem. Everything, when you think you solve a problem, is like what Tan said, you create two other ones. So there's nothing different about this, and that's just kind of how it is in that way.
But what about the difference that the 150 million can make in Jamaica?
Well, any money is helpful in that way, but the other thing you face in an event like this immediately after is you get massive inflation in the materials you need.
Right.
The cost of shovels go up because everybody's out there trying to buy a shovel. So the way I've talked about this separately, and I think what you need in insurance like this, the way it needs to be, is actually that you need a risk sharing component as opposed to be a risk transfer component. These mechanisms are risk transfer. You face a risk, I end up taking the loss if it happens. So you've transferred it to me. You need a risk-sharing component where what you want to do is you want to build rapid response businesses that operate on a day-to-day basis. Because then they are ready all the time and they are actually in place and they can finance themselves in that way. And then when something catastrophic happens, you will have more of the shovels already there. And you avoid some of those pressures, and that will allow any kind of payment to be more readily used. But if you go by a emergency response basis like FEMA and so on, those pools get drawn down on very quickly. I've forgotten what it was. I think it was sometime last year. The half of FEMA's budget was taken down in 8 days or something.
Yeah, it was like halfway through the year. It was all over.
It was just bang, gone.
Yeah.
So what you need is actually a risk sharing insurance, and that's the type of insurance that the Danish mortgages. But
is that the Caribbean sort of? They've got some Caribbean sort of fund to help each other. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
You can't do that as a fund to help each other. The fund is potentially good. That's the risk transfer type. There's a fund I can draw on. The risk sharing type is one where you actually have businesses that are rapid response businesses everywhere.
Yeah.
There you share your risk. And then you can pop in and go along, and you have a pricing structure which accounts for what may happen in that way. So each place is different in that way.
So I suppose that before we move on to the next subject, so what I'd love to clarify is how close are we for, that societal collapse aspect where, if Jamaica gets hit with one more storm, it's all over, or is it already over because they'll be rebuilding, what? So that bit, that how close are we? Do you think?
I think for specific countries like Jamaica, as Richard is saying, it's very hard for them to rebuild from here. I mean, if the world was like how it was the past 20 years, then that's fine, but it's going to keep coming, and that's the problem. So that becomes a problem that you can't fix before the next hit. So I think we're there. But how close are we from the perspective of someone looking out there, a Bill Gates type person and so on, is nowhere near, because we still think that our equity market's going to keep going up.
Yeah.
And there's no way people and the reason is because, for the people with the wealth and assets, the boomers, and I'm just on the edge of the boomers in that way. This vision of the equity markets keep going up basically says, I don't have to worry about it. If in the next 20 years, that's fine, I'm okay. So that gives the momentum and support for it. That gives all the kind of, and markets are momentum in that way. They don't really reflect the future. They reflect the present. They reflect the vision of the future people have.
Yeah.
And the boomers in that way, like Bill Gates along, have this vision that actually is fine. These things are less important as disruptions than we think, than we've been told. And so they're going to keep the markets up. So you get this complete separation.
Yeah. And that's why I think for a lot of us, we're sort of sitting there scratching our heads, right? Any final thoughts on this before we go on, Richard? Anything you want to add, or?
No, but I think David sums this up eminently. It's like any insurance from here when you have adverse events. You might not be able to get it next time, and if you actually can get it, you probably can't afford it. So for me, it's game over. Yeah,
right. And I'm sort of trying to emphasize this point because I just think it's really important for us to get our heads into this moment and what it really means, so that we can get prepared, right? So as unpleasant as it is to hear, I think we're all going to face it in some form or another, whether it's food shortages, which is going to result in food inflation. We heard the UK's lost a year's worth of bread from wheat losses from all the crazy storms, right? So that's going to start having an impact, right? So we've got COP30 obviously kicking off in Brazil this week. Already there's lots of negative headlines coming around. I I'm really not expecting anything to come out of this. It's going to blow my hair back. We already had a pretty disappointing sort of announcement from the British government, the Tropical Forest Forever facility, which the Brits actually co-designed with the Brazilians and were expected to launch, have basically said they're not putting any money in, and apparently because there's something wrong with it doesn't meet whatever thing that they've expected. But then, it's just one of those things. But anyway, anyone, any expectations?
I mean, the UK pulls out because they haven't got any money to contribute to it. But that aside, Brazil is drilling oil.
Mm-hmm.
It's
in the mouth
opening
of the
up,
Amazon.
drilling in the mouth of the Amazon. It's drilling in the pre-salt layer, below the pre-salt layer. It is advancing the technology to get more oil out from kind of extreme places that we had thought was not possible in that way.
Yeah.
And this is and Suriname, kind of like this is the one country in South America that is still carbon negative in terms of its forests. In other words, it absorbs more. Brazil and other places, they actually emit more carbon out of their forests. Yeah. And Suriname is a new petrostate.
Yeah.
So these two things are entirely inconsistent with each other. There is a way to fix it. It's kind of the mechanism in my book, Thriving at Nature's Pace. But we're not really looking at trying to reduce the size of the bucket of oil that we're taking out. We're trying to compensate by good sounding things that we're going to get people to contribute money. But where does that money come from? It comes from the exploitation and the extraction.
Yeah.
So unless you kind of wrap this thing properly back round, you're just kind of going to argue about how it's not being done when everything that it's doing is to make it worse. Look at the drought in the Amazon last year.
Oh,
You're
there's
going to
get... There's a report in The Guardian about the boiling rivers and lakes.
Yeah. So you go along and you give $1 per acre or $10 per acre, or even $100 per acre of your tropical rainforest, but you keep pumping up, keep drilling out all these materials. And Colombia is South America's largest coal exporter. And it has a lot of rainforests, and it will benefit from something like that. But it's not doing that to say we don't need to actually take our coal out anymore.
All right, Joe, Richard, any thoughts on COP30?
No, I think it's actually pretty close to an irrelevancy.
Yeah.
I don't see what possibly can come out of there that has any bearing on the world at large. I mean,
yeah,
the people that matter are not there.
Exactly. We haven't got China, Russia, India, as well as obviously the US attending. Yeah,
it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. Joe, any thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are around going back to Bill Gates' memo that was heard around the world, right? I mean, I think in terms of I was thinking about the impact it had and why it resonated or made as much of a noise. When I read it, actually, it was quite. I didn't read it directly. I used Notebook LM to help me understand the balance of it, and it's actually quite interesting. It's one of those things where, when you have a friend who doesn't wear makeup and she puts on a bit of it, you go like, oh my goodness, what are you doing, right? I think Bill Gates's perspective, or where his position has always been, is people tended to see him as further to the left. And what I'm seeing in this particular message actually is it's actually quite a centrist sort of a thing, and it's just there's so many things about this which actually make sense about how, and it is not what the right has made of it. It's not what the left has made of it, right? It is really about talking about, well, these are the compromises that we have given the world that we have right now, and we're using and the metric that he's proposing we use is just to measure it from human perspective, as in like, you know, from a every human perspective, and even some of the criticism that comes along with the fact that he's donating money to an organization which is described as climate denying, and I think that's a label I don't think they put on themselves. It's the label that's been put on them by
Well, this is Bjorn Lomborg. He's pretty infamous in the climate community, and the climate is considered to be in the climate denier space. So
yeah, I understand that. I mean, but I'm saying is that, you know, like there is the climate realism, as in like what's happening, what really is happening, what are the there is more to find out about things. I'm always open to hear what there is to find out in terms of science. It's like if you don't completely agree with me that this is bad, then you're a denier, and I'm not fully on board with that, because I do feel that there is a balance. I do feel that there's something that needs to happen. I do feel that there is that like, for instance, one of the big arguments is about energy and its role in feeding the masses, and that is something that's pretty hard to deny. There's going to be that part of it. There is also the fact that there's a need for consistent energy, right? And then we in cultures where we have consistent energy, we go like, oh yeah, of course you can try and do this. You can go with alternative sources. And at the same time, I had conversations with somebody from Bangladesh the other day, and they don't have consistent energy. They have days when 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, they have no power, right?
Mhm.
And if you say, well, it's okay, why don't we just use, so we can bring in solar power that will solve all the problems. As it is right now, maybe not, right? And of course, you hear about things like the technology that I hope we have time to speak about, is the Australian development.
yeah, it's cool, right? Yeah.
You know, the super capacitors, basically that have the quality of super capacitors, which basically means they can hold high voltage differences, but famously they usually can't hold much power. And now what they've got is the best of both worlds. They got the high voltage potential of capacitors, as well as the storage capacity of batteries, and that can change the game. So it's an example that falls, I think, into that calculation as well. That the world is full of things that can be both good and bad at the same time, and there needs to be some kind of balance in terms of deciding what is the thing you want to do right now, right? That it isn't as simple as saying that binarily you don't just inherently choose the green option, because the article doesn't say don't choose the green option. The article is saying let's try to remove the green tax, right? Let's try to take away the green premium. Let's try to erode all that. And if we're going to be ending up, for instance, making a choice, and some of the choices that he talks about, I think are valid, right? If you have to make a choice between saving several millions with a vaccination or a kind of a program that's going to help them in terms of food or vaccinations or whatever it is, and the choice against that is wind farms, you should make the more humane choice, even though the prevalent idea is that this is a big horrible thing that's about to happen, right? I mean that's the gist of it. So it's the kind of thinking that perhaps has the same feeling, or comes with the same feeling as Trump having a Great Gatsby party as people are going hungry. It's the optics don't quite work, but sometimes if you step back and if you can say, for instance, in that and this is not me arguing for it, but I'm just saying, if in that room something effective was happening that was changing the world for the positive, you could make a case for it. Of course, in this particular case, or the case I'm referring to, that there isn't. But I think what Bill Gates is trying to talk about is those situations when there is a net positive that might come out of it, making a choice that is not leaning towards the green.
Yeah. All right. So there's just a couple of points I just want to say, Joe. And I'm all about the nuance of the conversation, and I agree with that. So this dude, Bjorn Lomborg, I'm all for listening to every point of view. So why does he have to misrepresent the data? So he'll take agreed climate science and he'll twist it to make his point, and also where he gets his funding from is the other issue. So the fossil fuel funding behind a lot of the deniers, that's a big issue. The other thing about the whole Bill Gates thing is I totally agree with you. I didn't take it as a not moving on the science that we need. I did take away that I don't think he's seeing the time frame as urgently as I'm seeing it, and I know a lot of other people are seeing. So, like for one thing, we've got to treat people for malaria. All right, so for every 0.1 of a degrees, the malarial range increases because the mosquitoes are moving more north, right? So if you don't stop it getting hotter, your problems that you want to solve is going to be bigger. And if you give a whole country a set of vaccines one year, and the next year they all die in a heat wave, kind of. So to me, it was his sense of time frame is still aligned with the conservative estimates of the IPCC report, which are very, very different. So James Hansen has been speaking a lot, and some of the other scientists that contribute to his report, right? We're on track for 3 degrees warming. We're still hearing 2050, 2100, but they're basically saying, within 25 years, we're basically toast. But it's not in 25 years that it's going to happen. It's gradually from this day forward it's going to happen, right? We've already lost the coral reefs.
It's not even just that. We're just talking, Jamaica.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's already happening.
The threshold of the temperature is not the measure. But I want to add this bit. I mean, and I want to go and take a kind of a religious perspective or something in some sense, right? So here's how it goes. We think that somehow we need to control everything and say this is the way it is and this is the way it is. So there's all this thing about, why did God make bad things happen? Basically, and the arguments countering that is, gives people choice. So we all have different choices and we all go along with different things and we have different roles to play. And Bill Gates may be right in saying that my role is to focus on malaria and those things. I want to be more concerned about those things. Bjorn Lomborg may be right in saying the best value I can get, the best that other people can get from my efforts and time is to do those things, which is great. Those are all choices that we can make along with this. It all fails when we start thinking that we need to play God in the version of God that we want, which is the version that says there won't be any bad things. I'll look after you. It's okay. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to play the version of God that is not God. And the part where we end up corrupting ourselves in that way is where we try to bend the fact to fit our story that I want to play God, to say that my role, which is to help people rather than to fix the climate as such, means that I have to denounce the climate. And that's the point Andrea just said, which is the part about Bjorn Lomborg in that way. It's not so much that, his message about fixing poverty and human, societal injustice is not important or not right. Is the part where he has to, the only way he can think of supporting this is the difference between Mother Teresa, who goes out there and says, I'm just going to be there. Okay, you find me there, that's what I'm doing. Versus a person who says, those other things are all wrong. That's why, you should go and be there with Mother Teresa. And this part, we constantly want to play God in the sense that we constantly think we have to fix everything. There are going to be pains coming out of this climate change. There will be, no matter what we do. We're already past that time. 40 years ago, it was different, but now it's too late. We see it in Jamaica, we see it in Vietnam, we see it in Philippines. We see it everywhere along in Wales and all these places. We still think we've got to fix everything so there's no pain, but we are failing to understand that we need to come ourselves as a process of kind of growing up through pain.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, David. Look, I'm just looking at the time, and I know we're sort of running out. So, the Sudan atrocities, I heard today that they think more than the amount of people that were killed in Gaza have been killed in Sudan. So it's shocking what's going on. But this week, the RSF, which is the other, so there's the army and the RSF. It sounds like they're caving into global pressure, because I think the outrage has been so big. So they're basically agreed to a humanitarian ceasefire. But the army in Sudan hasn't done any better. I just really want to maybe finish on one news item, and that is Elon Musk has had his. This story, it just really pisses me off. It's so, from all these different perspectives. I mean, there's another story basically in the Byline Times saying he's got to be kept out of British political influence, and that's through obviously Starlink, through Twitter, through all the other things he's doing. I'm not a fan of that man, and I never will be. He can never win me back. I think he's fundamentally evil. That's my personal opinion. I know other people still, pray at the altar of Musk. The idea that the company can't succeed without him, I just don't get it. He has no vision, as far as I'm concerned. He reads too many fantasy or science fiction books, but I don't think he has long-term strategic thinking at all. I think it's proved time and time again. But the idea that the company can't succeed without him. But Joe, you, I'm sure, will disagree with me. So just wanted to ask you what you think, and then let's get the economic perspective.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree that a lot of his inspiration comes from science fiction, but then again, all the great stuff does, right? I mean, if you look at, I mean, we it's going to be a habit now. We end up the show talking about Star Trek every time, but if you look at some of the stuff, if you look at what Apple produced and basically brought to the world, and you watch an old episode of Star Trek, you go like, oh, basically Apple just ripped off Star Trek and said, let's do all the stuff that Star Trek is doing, right? So science fiction is about people who really imagine what could be in the world, and then you have the people who are the engineers who solve the problems and work towards it. And Elon Musk has a certain amount of determination and talent that allows him to create this kind of result. He is an immense risk taker, and he has a lot of resources to take risks with. And because of that, you can find him in a situation where he is launching the 6th rocket in a row, where the 5 before have failed, and this is the last bit of money that they have to make this last one happen, and it pulls through. It takes them to the next stage, right? Because he has this kind of the financially, they have the deep pockets to do that. Not just he, but the people who back him in the company. So you are going to get these big, huge home runs, and this is true in business as well as in trading, when you have that ability to put that much money on the roulette table, and it's better odds than a roulette table, because you're lighting it all up. Because if you roll the clock back and you think about the things that SpaceX has been able to do, and you think about what Tesla has generally been able to do, if you just roll it back, just 10 years. It is really amazing. It is an incredible push forward, and this criticism about the $1 trillion the $1 trillion pay pay thing, I think people are getting caught by the headlines of it and not realizing that it's a performance bonus. It's a performance based reward, right? You have to hit certain targets along the way, and if you have those kinds of targets that he has, to make this $1 trillion bonus, it's quite hefty. He has to put 1 million robo taxis on the ground. He's got to get the value of the company to some 8 point something billion, where it's already now only at 1.5 or something like that. It is quite a lot of it's quite a tall order. And if you talk about the metrics, I don't know how far out of the corporate metrics it is to hit those targets. If you're able to create that kind of, well, we'll call it value, if you can create that and it can make it happen and it rolls out that way, it's tremendous, because the for everything, for all the Cybertrucks produced, they essentially still have the Tesla brand that could still recover and could become a really important part of the transportation solution of the future, where you could just be anywhere in the US, call for a cab or call for a car, call for transport, and it's maybe 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 of all the autonomous vehicles will be a Tesla. And it'll take you from one point to the other, and you just have that market in America. That would be already such a huge market. And then you add on additional things that could make Tesla an amazing company. I mean, if they really solve the Android issue or the Android problem, if they can figure out how to have some machine in your house that can do everything, even if it's a bit slow. If you think about the Roomba, right? Many people hated the Roomba when it first came out. As it got better and more reliable, now the Roomba is a pretty much a common experience. And you think about an Android robot kind of taking the same kind of path as well, becoming something that is going to be in every home. Like you might look in terms of having domestic help in Singapore, for instance, right? And for a price point that really makes sense, because if you think about paying $20,000 for a machine that could basically free you up to do a lot of other economic things, that's a big solution. So yeah, it's a big reward being put out there that makes the news, but it's only after they cross some pretty significant milestones. And for me, I think if they do cross those milestones, we should celebrate at least that part of it. I'm not sure if we want to have to, if we should be willing to accept the fact that any one person has that kind of financial power. There's a whole different thing about that. But in terms of creating things of real impact, I mean, I was just thinking about just considering relative to that. The CEO of NVIDIA, for instance, right? And he's making the components that basically are making AI possible. But it's not quite the same as a whole rocket system, basically, that is delivering more than half of all the satellites that are put in space currently.
Yeah, which makes him dangerous because of all the power he's got. And now there's Chinese astronauts who can't get down because of the space waste, and it's I kind of I hear that perspective, I really do, Joe, but there's this other one that it's out of alignment with this moment in time. Maybe I'll put us all equal on the screen. Just like everyone's talking about inequality. I just think he wants to be called the first trillionaire. I think that's his ego. But I don't know. He disgusts me. Yeah.
Richard?
For me, it's not hugely important actually as an issue for many levels. Like Joe says, it's performance-based. If I was the board, I would have some serious issues with how that performance metric was constructed. At the end of the day, it's a shareholder decision. Tesla has those shareholders that have elected a board that put it forward, and they couldn't bring down the proposal, which tells you the shareholders are happy.
Yeah, 75%.
Yeah. Shareholders are happy to get diluted. I don't think he's a particularly good business leader. I think he makes some very erratic decisions. And, once upon a time, you probably started with 1 million Musks. And along the way, most of them have fallen away because they made bad decisions and erratic decisions. And he's the last one standing. And one of these days is going to make a fatal erratic decision. It's going to bring the company down. In my likelihood, it's quite likely.
Or his drug use, right?
Anything can happen, right? To me, it's ultimately Tesla is basically a joke, because it's a company constructed with no real earnings that was arbitraging a crazy federal concept called carbon credits.
Which people don't recognize is still until recently, and it's and I think that's kind of the point, really, because what all this discussion is doing is not bringing out who do you really want to buy your shares in, and this goes to the structure of the markets. The problem, and we had this thing about the issue of Norway's sovereign wealth fund, and they objected to the vote for Elon Musk, but they have this thing that they're index tracking, so they feel they actually have to stay holding it. And this is basically the problem. These people are wealthy, these companies are at the level they are, not because of what the companies achieves, but because of the monthly contributions that the people who have ordinary jobs make to their pension contributions and investment contributions. That's what elevates it. That's what makes a good fraction of the shareholders feel they just have to go along with it. And they know this is also a momentum thing. As long as people keep doing this, is fine. Carry on. This is how they feel that the next 20 years will be like the past 20 years, regardless of what happens along in there. And so almost regardless of what kind of decisions he may make as a company, Tesla as a company for electric vehicles versus BYD or any of the many others at the moment, which you prefer to invest in if you are going to make an investment choice, versus which will you now need to invest in because of the weight of the market that it represents. So all the investment decisions are now based more on the weight of the market that a company represents than the actual innovations that they create. So what will happen out of it? Tesla will do well. The shareholders will feel rewarded for their decisions. What will happen to the consequence of that investment? Investments are meant to nourish the world. Is it will do the opposite.
Yeah. It's that classic, we're investing in the future through our pensions in things that are destroying the future, so therefore the pensions won't even be available when we finally get the chance to claim them, right? And Joe, I saw a piece that was talking about, exactly. I learned a lot from that book. I think I took some good insights away. But Joe, I was reading some of the sci-fi writers that the tech bros keep referencing. Are criticizing the tech bros' interpretation of their stories and what they actually meant. So there's actually a really interesting, you'd enjoy it. There's an interesting conversation going on between the tech bros and the sci-fi writers. Mark Zuckerberg, in particularly, knows something. Whoever wrote it just when he's got no idea what he's talking about. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, what's keeping you guys distracted?
Pine needles.
Pine needles. Okay. Yeah, right. It is. Yeah. Tell them why.
Well, for our sins, we have a small house in Brittany and France, and I'm there at the moment. And the whole town is basically full of pine trees. And pine trees are lovely and they give shade and they're very majestic. They also drop an incredible amount of needles at the end of the season. So it's like walking through a mangrove, probably, when you need to go anywhere. So I need to sweep off some parts of the externalities of the house today. That's the main project. Yeah,
that sounds like a lovely spot. David?
I went and saw a film called Imagine, so I want to definitely give that a plug. It's a film made by a group, I think they're called AIME, AIME, I think is for Australian Indigenous Mentoring something. So they're kind of First Nation Australians, kind of how the group started. And they've now gone sort of to many, many other places beyond that. in their origin. But during COVID, they had, everybody was having difficult experiences. And during COVID, they had a collaboration with kind of maybe over 100 people, young people, across 17 countries, I think, where they basically worked on a Google Doc and shared, and everybody just added bits on it and so on to make a story.
Oh, no.
And this is a film that came out of that story that they made.
Okay.
After they liked the story and they thought, let's do that and so on. And what it does is really an exploration. I think of it as a bit like the Odyssey journey kind of thing, kind of where you go and it becomes a discovery of the world and yourself and things. And it's basically a 15-year-old teenager who's locked down under COVID on her phone, getting depressed and being carried away by an alien companion to discover the world, and discovering through indigenous wisdom, identity and freedom in a world that was in crisis. In that way.
I'll have to add the link.
Fantastic film, and I think it's actually, look it up. If you just search under AIME and then Imagine, and it will pop up. And I think it's actually available for people to show in schools and things like that. So please go and check it out.
No, it sounds awesome. Joe?
Well, I am dipping into a pool that I left for quite a while, and I thought, because it was going to be a little bit more predictable than I would like to participate in. So I was a fan of The Good Place when the first season came out, and at the end of the first season, I realize that there's still people who are for which it's a spoiler, but at the end of the first season, there is some kind of a revelation there, which made it a bit challenging for me to go, like, I'll come back for the second season. But what I've heard so far is that all the seasons have been so great. And so I finally got into it and started to watch from the second season onwards. And I'm going to say, actually, it is quite a satisfying watch. And I won't say too much about it, except for the fact that if you're a fan of philosophy, you might be strangely entertained by this show.
Okay.
It's okay. Absolutely. I'm a real fan of this show. I think Joe and I've got great watching things, Star Trek, The Good Place, and really it brings out all those moral philosophy conundrums.
Yeah.
All right.
So it really does ask you some. It actually, while it's doing comedy, it actually is making you think about some pretty serious ideas as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, that's always a good sign of comedy. All right, so I think because you mentioned it, Richard, I've somehow found myself watching some Christmas movies this week, and these are So when I lived in Boston, there was a channel called Hallmark Television for Women, and it was full of really corny stuff that you only watch when you're by yourself because you're too embarrassed to watch it when anybody else is around. So I've had a pretty empty house, and I am in a house of boys, right? Even the dog. So when there's no boys, I'll watch the girliest of girly stuff, just to give myself a break. But there's on Netflix, there's a movie called Persuasion, and it's based on a Jane Eyre novel, and it's kind of like a Bridgerton period drama without the sex, but like multiracial sort of aristocracy type thing, which I love. So anyway, it's a really sweet love story if you want to have a break. And we watched The Rock's new movie, The Smashing Machine, and I'm not a big fan of fights. I would never go and watch a fight, but I was intrigued by him doing a movie like this, a serious movie, and he does an amazing job. It's like a documentary style, and right at the very end, they show the original guy, and they were obviously before their time, before it became a global sort of movement that, paid people millions and millions of dollars. But if you have an opportunity to watch it, if you're interested, I love how The Rock likes to find unique stories of individuals and tell those stories. I think I like that in an actor. There's some female actors that do it as well. So yeah, The Smashing Machine, it's interesting. Not what I was expecting at all in the way it was filmed way. Yeah. So if you like and I'm sure, David, that's probably not your cup of tea at all. Richard, probably not yours either, right?
No. Surprisingly versatile. It's only really sci-fi I don't do.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, I'm with you.
I love kind of like the rom-com Christmas movies.
You
I think
don't
what I've
like
heard
them?
about Smashing Machine, which is very interesting, is that it's the real story and the real violence between all the acted out violence that happens in that space.
Yeah.
And
It's so violent.
it's kind of an amazing flip. And if you actually, even just to hear about how the film was made, it's the film itself, even the process of creating some of those scenes, there was some great violence in that as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's just like like punching each other knees in the head. It was like, ugh. It was it's pretty full on. As they were working through the rules of what can you do and what can you not do. But yeah, it was pretty tough, but part of the story of humanity, right? Anyway, thanks guys. We talked about lots and lots of stuff. We missed a few things, including the guy at the Miss Universe who was insulting towards one of the young ladies, and they all basically told him to get stuffed, which I thought was great. And then if you look out for it, he's crying on social media because it's like Anyway, so that was good. I was just glad the girls stood up for each other. So, but always lots going on. Try not to get too depressed. It's the story of our time. We have a front row seat to chaos, and we'll be here to talk about it next week. Oh, we've got Natalie Turner coming next week. Joe knows Natalie. She's about to publish her first. What is it? I've reviewed it. It's brilliant. I can't remember. Anyway, she'll tell us about it next week. She's great. She's going to be talking about finding your purpose, and she did a TED talk not so long ago on the subject, and she's really cool. She's had a very interesting life. You guys will like her. So looking forward to having her next week. Yeah. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.